So next, Drive Safe Dave on the show is Rebecca Brewster. Been on the show many times with ATRI. And this, Rebecca, pardon me, but this is one of my favorite things because, Dave, what does ATRI stand for?
American Transportation Research Institute.
Oh, you got it. Normally he struggles with that, but today he nailed it. Good job, Drive Safe, Dave. And Rebecca, welcome to BCB Live.
Pleasure to talk about what we're doing at ATRI and hopefully get folks engaged in our research.
Yes. So, Rebecca, boy, Dave, let me tell you, part of what Rebecca does over there at ATR, and she's not alone, many fine folks over there, but Rebecca, we're going to ask you to repeat that again. Hey, what is it that happens over there?
So we are the trucking industry's not-for-profit research organization. So everything we do at ATRI has one clear mission, and that's to provide the data and analysis to improve the trucking industry's safety and productivity. So whether that's looking at the impact of regulations or looking at what's happening in the economy and what that means for the industry, or looking at what's happening with our transportation infrastructure, those are all topics that are ripe for study by ATRI.
So part of that, Dave, let me go this, because it requires participation, not by people just like you and I and some of the executives, but by the drivers themselves, those out there on the road driving. Rebecca, talk to that. How important are the drivers, men and women out there in America today? How important is that they participate in these studies?
It is so critical, and I just am so appreciative of all the professional drivers who participate in our studies over the years, because in my opinion, I view the men and women who drive each day to deliver this nation's economy to be some of the ultimate users, end users of our research. So whether we're improving congestion through identifying bottlenecks or identifying what the industry's top concerns are so that issues like truck parking can get addressed, that input has to come from professional drivers, the folks who are the boots on the ground, who know what's happening out there. So right now we have a survey open as part of a larger study looking at what are ways we can bring more women into driving positions. And we want driver input on that. Well, obviously we want women drivers to input on that because they're the real boots on the ground for what are the challenges they face. But we also want men to participate in that survey because we want the male perspective on what they think this industry needs to do differently, perhaps, or accentuates certain things to make sure that we make this an industry where women feel like they have an opportunity to succeed and can succeed. And obviously some of those issues transcend gender. I mean, lack of available truck parking is everybody's problem. And it's, as I've described it in presentations around the country, I say it's a national disgrace that we have not fixed this problem. When I started on this job in 1993, 31 years ago, one of the first studies I worked on was about the lack of available truck parking. We should not be talking about it 3 decades later. So.
You know, Rebecca, as we talk about it and what ATRI does for the country and what it does for our government and what it does for us as a whole, it's actually been getting a lot of press, and you've been getting a lot of press, a good press about the findings that you get, and they utilize your findings. I think it's important to really realize just how valuable each person's voice is when it comes to the government and what you're showing them.
Absolutely, and I can point to so many examples where we had input from drivers, and motor carriers, but input from drivers on a topic. We did the analysis, we published the results, and it made its way, that study made its way to Congress and actually affected change. And I just referenced truck parking. That's a lot of what more recently has occurred. But we did a lot of research on the hours of service rules a number of years back when it seemed like the hours of service rule changing every 5 minutes, including the 34-hour restart provisions that required a 1 a.m. to 5 a.m., 1 a.m. to 5 a.m. overnight periods, which was a disaster. And we did the survey, we did data collection using our truck GPS data, and we had drivers input on it. We showed how that was so detrimental not only to industry productivity, but to drivers' ability to get rest, which is what the hours of service rules were intended to do. And so that analysis was made its way to Capitol Hill, made its way to FMCSA, and as you know, we no longer have that particular provision in the hours of service rules.
Actually, not only did it do that, it actually made such sweeping changes that I think it's been. I can't remember any other time when some of the laws that went into effect actually benefited the drivers across the board, not only with that ruling, but with their hours of service, the split sleeper rules, and all the things that were added in to help create a little bit safer, a little bit better, and a little bit more toolbox, I would say, more tools in the toolbox for the driver to benefit out there on the road. And that was actually directly impacted by some of your studies.
Well, I'd like to think that we really did have a role in that. And when I got my start in the industry, not even with ATRI, but years before with a trucking company, one of my first jobs was auditing driver logs. And so I feel sort of a deep connection to the hours of service rules from when I was in my early 20s. So I am happy to say that when you can provide data, when you don't fill your arguments with just rhetoric or your opinion, but when you have solid data behind it, that really helps move the needle when it comes to changing regulations in a way that positively impacts the industry.
Rebecca, you brought it up, and I'm going to kind of stick with this for a second because I can't help but think that truck parking is a detriment to the male, female, to rest, to safety. It hurts all of these things, yet it can't seem to, we can't seem to move the needle too much. What are you seeing? You spend more time in Washington than I do. What are you seeing as the big hindrance? So, I mean, why can't we have more truck parking today?
Well, at the end of the day, the solution to truck parking is to provide more truck parking, obviously, and that takes money. And so I am hopeful that there does seem to be a recognition by the USDOT and by members of Congress that this is an issue that is bigger than just the trucking industry. This is an issue for the entire supply chain and for the nation's highway safety. And there is movement to commit dedicated funds to building out more truck parking. But that is a piece of the problem. The other piece is we've got to have relief at the local level, at local zoning laws, so that we can put that truck parking where it needs to be. Fairly easy to put it out on open stretches of interstate where there's plenty of land and not a lot of locals to complain about not wanting a truck parking in their own backyard. Move it into a more urbanized area, it becomes a lot more challenging, so that even if the money is available to build out that parking, we've got to have the participation of locals and local officials to understand that if your population is dense and your population wants everything brought by truck, they've got to provide a place for those men and women to rest.
Build it and they will come. If you build it, the drivers will definitely find the space, right? They'll make it there.
Absolutely.
So we've been talking about a couple of topics. Why don't you go over, Rebecca, really quickly before we go right back to the women in truck? Why don't you go back over some of the top things that drivers see in our today that you have found out through your research?
Well, we've talked about truck parking. We've also done a lot of work on the role of owner-operators and independent contractors in our economy. So we know that, particularly in the state of California, that employment model is under threat, and other states are looking at similar legislation. And so we did research that included a lot of driver input. Over 2,100 drivers participated in that research to really build out the understanding of what it means for an individual to choose the path to be an owner-operator, independent contractor. Such an important part of our supply chain. They play such an important role. And there's really been a lot of misinformation about how people get into that role and why they choose to do that. And I really believe our research brought to light the fact that people choose this because they want to be entrepreneurs. They want to set their own routes and times and when they drive and when they rest. And it really does provide a great source of income for those individuals. And so, research like that just fills out the narrative, if you will, on an issue that's being considered in state legislators by state legislators, I think is a critical role that ATRI provides.
Yeah, Rebecca, hot and heavy, because we have about 3 minutes left. Talk to me about what's next up at ATRI. I mean, what are some of the big studies we're going to see? Where do you need us, the trucking industry, to really kind of step in and help out?
So we talked about the barriers to women entering the industry. The other one we're getting ready to launch is an update to research we did in 2019, looking at the topic of detention. One of those topics that drivers routinely rank as one of their biggest issues. First out of the starting gate is going to be a motor carrier survey to understand detention from the motor carrier side of things. And then following on to that, we will launch a driver survey where we will need driver input to help really round out that data set on what's happened with detention since our research that we published in 2019.
I want to follow up on that real quick, because the data that we all have in the industry is significantly better than what we had in 2019. How do you think that's going to help tell the story to the shippers, right? Because there's an absolute cost both to safety and financially to trucking companies, independent contractors relating to detention. What do you think about the data we have today compared to 2018, 2019?
Well, certainly it's better. You know, we've all got ELDs now, and so we can track that data. But I think what I'm really hopeful will come out of this is using that data not only to sort of highlight what the problem is, but more importantly, using the input from motor carriers and drivers on what can we do collectively with our customers to bring this situation under control. Because again, this is one of those that has tentacles everywhere. It makes it harder to recruit people into the industry. It puts pressure on the truck parking system if your customer doesn't let you rest there when they're the ones who have held you up. And so it's really one of those issues that touches so many, the hours of service rules, it touches so many facets of the industry.
Rebecca, what's the best way that people can get involved quickly and easily to get to your site? I need to know the website. I need to know where we're going.
Our website address is easy to remember because it's what we do, truckingresearch.org, truckingresearch.org. All of our live surveys are right on our homepage. You can download any of our research for free. You can send us a research suggestion. That should be your one-stop shop to be in touch with ATRI and be engaged with ATRI, truckingresearch.org.
Before we get out of here, Dave, Rebecca's got some homework to do. What does she got to say?
Rebecca, you know that before you leave, we ask all our guests to not only mention their name, who they're with, they also that you're watching BCB Live, the safest station in the nation.
You got it, guys, and thanks for having me on today. I'm Rebecca Brewster, the president of the American Transportation Research Institute, otherwise known as ATRI, and I'm on BCB Live, the safest station in the nation.
All right.
Thank you so much, Rebecca.